this video, I'm going to break down the entire process of how we bid our fire alarm job, from getting the drawings to uploading the drawings to our software, to using the tools from the manufacturer to build our quote, and how we're going to place the numbers on our material and our labor to come up with the final quote. So let's get it. When I find me a set of drawings, whether it be through searching for jobs or actually getting an email to put out a non-competitive bid for a fire alarm job, the first thing I look for is the cover page, because I download the drawing straight to my computer and I look at the cover page, and the first thing I look at is I look at the horns and strobes, because I want to identify if this is going to be a speaker voice system, because if it's going to be a voice system, they're not going to list out that I need amplifiers and other devices that I need to make this voice system work. So the first thing I look for to see if it's going to be horns and strobes or if it's going to be speaker strobes, and that'll give me a quick indication of how I'm actually going to build out this particular project. So this drawing here are horns and strobes. So cool. We know we're going to have a basic horn system, and we know we don't have to add any additional equipment or do any additional programming. So I really just breeze through this really quickly. The next step after that is then I upload it to my estimating software. And what we use here is ProCure. We use this to mark up all of our drawings. This is good for the low voltage community, electricians, plumbers, painters, and especially fire alarm contractors. Very easy tool to use. So I'm going to go through the first page and show you how I would mark up the drawings, and then we're going to download the proposal and I'm going to build it out for you so you can see how I actually price out these jobs step by step. After I upload it, I always like to just read it, because even after I upload it, I always come back to the cover page to read it, just to look at the notes, because I want to understand exactly what they want us to do with this fire alarm system, because a lot of times they'll ask you additional things inside of the notes, and if you're not paying attention, you just lost yourself some money, because you're going to still have to pay for it because it's inside of the contract drawings. You want to make sure you read the codes, the scope of work. If you don't understand what any of the abbreviations are, they have a legend here as well. Here is for the fire alarm programmer. This is how you're going to actually program the system. Generally, if you're already doing this, you pretty much have an idea of how the system is supposed to operate. But here, if you don't, this will give you a quick indication. The smoke detector should be enunciating at the fire alarm control panel. It should also be activating the alarm in the central station, turn on the horns and strobes, display text. If you have a remote enunciator, shut the fans down, sound the temporal 3 alarm. Also, you want to turn off the gas, and they have some special programming because they have a gas detector, then they have a PA system that we have to shut down. And there's also a device tag legend, because this is going to give you, especially if you're giving this over to an installer, each device needs an address, whether if you're using a Firelight or an Edwards system, some type of system, either is going to be binary, is going to be a dial meter, or you're going to have some type of serial number. You will have to identify what these addresses are on top of the drawings, and you have to know what they are. So when you're doing the programming, you could actually label the smoke detector that's on the first floor in front of the elevator exactly that. And the electrician can also install it in that exact location and put the address you labeled on that particular device, so everything runs concurrently. Here would be a fire alarm wireless. You're pretty much telling the electrician the size wire, type of wire, for what circuit they need to run it for. So these drawings here have approximately 10 pages, right? And I'm going to show you what the last few pages look like, and then when we actually build this system, I'm going to show you how we get that information. So the first thing we want to do is we want to blow it up as big as we can to make sure we see all of the fire alarm devices. And on the left side, we have our fire alarm devices that we can select, so that way we can select them on the actual floor plans. So this can actually tally up all of the devices we have to actually purchase from the manufacturer, so we can send them off for the electrician to install. So if you don't understand what these symbols are, then you would have to go back to the legend page back and forth, or just print this page out, so that way you can have this legend page. This is the fire alarm symbol legend, so that way you can have this page right handy to you, so you don't have to keep going back and forth. But if you know what the devices are and you have them here on the left side, you could just select them. If you don't have it there, all you have to do is just add them, type it in, heat detector, and then hit create. Or you could just add a new symbol. You could change the size of the symbol. You could also change the color of the symbol if you want. If you want counts in order, the counter just individually, that's what that's for. Linear and linear drop is if you're running wires and things like that. So they give you the distance from one point to the next. But in order for you to get the distance from one point to the next, you got to make sure you define your drawing scale in order for you to have the exact measurement. All right, so let's figure out how many devices we have on this page. We know we have some relays, some smoke, some heat, some COs, and things like that. So the first thing we want to do is, since my eye caught the control relay, I'm going to look for relay, control relay, and then I'm going to just check all the CRs. We're going to do this live too. Then we uncheck it, so that way we can select the next device, and that'll be a heat detector. So we're going to hit that. Then the next one will be a CO. Then we got a pull station over here. Then we got a pull station here, pull station here, pull station here, pull station here. And you could blow it up. You could explode it just in case if it's too small, you can't see it. We have a horn strobe. strobe, another heat. Now, if you're wondering what these cloud bubbles are, this is like a question mark. Should we put this here? Do you want this here? We're designing a system and we're handing it off to the MTA for them to approve our design. So either we're going to install it or we're not going to install it. But pretty much we're making a suggestion like, hey, you need a pull station there. So once you get everything, you unselect, you click on, and then just drag the page over. We have some single input modules for some Tampa switches. And you can name these whatever you want. So if this is, you want to change the name to monitor module, you can change it to monitor module. You can change the size, and you could also change the symbol. And then we could also give it a new color. And then we could just click close. When we select all of our single input modules, it'll be that color, that size, and that shape. So we select the rest of our strobes. And I'm going to speed this up so I can go through this whole thing so that way you don't have to sit here and watch me click all of this up. Now, so once we have all of our devices marked up, we just want to double check and make sure that we have everything selected. And if you see here, I only put one on a Tampa switches because it's telling me a monitor module for the Tampa switch. So I wouldn't select it 2 times because all I need is one module, one single input for this one Tampa switch. So once we verify everything is correct and we marked up our entire drawings, the next thing we want to do is go over to proposal so we can create our proposal. But before I do that, let me just explain something. If you have your information in here, like all of your devices, your fire alarm control panels, your smoke detectors, and you have your pricing next to it, like how much each device costs, and you have your labor next to it, you have your waste percentage, your markup, your total cost, you could actually do your entire proposal from this entire system. However, we don't use it that way. I actually just use it to give me the quantity of the fire alarm system. So essentially, I'm pretty much showing you how to run an entire business as a solopreneur. If you have a team, you will be delegating these tasks and options, and they will be using the system in the way the system is needed to be used. You wouldn't be going through all of these different types of steps to make one thing happen. So as a solopreneur, you have to find ways, creative ways to make things happen as efficient as you can make it. So you can actually just do the whole entire thing from here. But let's go over to proposal, and it's going to give us the quantity counts of all of this information. So we show proposal, and here we go. So now you could preload all of this information inside of your quote, give it all of this level of detail. It'll actually have your total price of what it actually will cost. So from there, you could just send that to your client. But what we need to do here is we're going to just export this and save it as a PDF. And what I like to do is print this out so I can have it next to me. And then I come here to the next step. So as a fire alarm company, if you're dealing with either Firelight or if you're dealing with Edwards, Simplex, whomever you're dealing with, the manufacturer is going to give you a tool that you can use to build out their system. Because when you build out a fire alarm system, especially if you got awarded the project, you're going to have to come up with battery calculations, voltage drop, and all these different things. And they give you the tools in order for you to do so. So as you build in the system, adding your devices, your horns and strobes, is actually calculating all of that detail in the background. So for this example, I'm going to show you how the Firelight light configurator works. So the first thing you want to do is you build your project, tell it what type of system it's going to be, if it's going to be a regular MS9600 or if it's going to be the big system the EX200, whatever system that Firelight sells, you select that system. So essentially, this is already built out, and I already built it out prior to actually doing this video because this is an actual job that we actually have that we're doing currently. These are MTA train stations we're actually building. So this is already built out. But essentially how this would actually work is once you have your fire alarm control panel selected, you have all of these different drop-down menus. So you can add, based on what you marked up on the drawing is what you want to select. Plus also you want to account for some additional information or some additional equipment like you may need, because I always go for the central station. So I'm going to include the central station, especially if it's a speaker voice system. I'm going to include the module so I can control the floors, maybe floor above. And I'm also going to account for the amplifiers, booster panels, whatever else I need to account for that was not on the drawings. So inside here, if we needed an annunciator, we select the type of annunciator we need, click add, and then give it a quantity of annunciators you need, and then click OK. Once you add the device, it's going to start calculating the power draw and all of these different things. If you need beam detectors, duct detectors, heat detectors, modules, smoke detectors, multi-criteria smokes, or just regular smoke detectors, all you got to do is select what you need, select the type of base that you need, click add, and give it the quantity of devices that you need, then click OK. It's going to automatically build it out. So now once the system is built out, you can go over to your bill of materials tab because you're going to have to order this equipment. And once you do that, all you do is export it to Excel, and this is what it's going to look like. So now all from here, you would just have to get your pricing. So if you have an account with ADI or whomever sells Firelight equipment, or you could just do some Google searching to see what the MSRP pricing. So let's say this is essentially your fire alarm system pricing. This is how much you would have to pay to buy this equipment to sell it over to a customer. So total price we will have to pay to buy this over the counter is $34,577. $27,000. So we will write that number down because that is our material cost. But I also want to make you aware, because as you build in the fire alarm system, we know that we don't have any batteries. So there's no batteries for this system. We know that the main fire alarm control panel needs 2 batteries. So what we would have to do is select a field, right click on it, insert, so that way we can have the same calculations and information on this particular row. So we need 2 batteries, and we could give it a name, 12 volt 7, and we can call these backup batteries. You can give it a model number if you have it, and the price, let's say the price is $27.99. Now, boom, we just automatically added additional devices to our actual bill of material quote. So if you need to add more equipment, highlight selected fields, select the whole line, copy it, so that way you can input the information and keep your calculations on point. We marked up our drawings. We know how many devices we need to build this fire alarm system. Now we know how much it's going to cost for us to buy this fire alarm equipment. Next after this is to actually build out our pricing, because I'm going to go through exactly all the material you're going to need in order for you to build out a fire alarm project. Hey, if you're ready to start your own fire alarm company, then join me at the Fire Alarm Business Blueprint. This is the most clearest step-by-step system that you're ever going to take to learn how to start, grow, and operate your own fire alarm company. This is a 9-step course that'll take you from building your foundation all the way to expanding your fire alarm business. So if you're ready to take the next step, then click the link below to book your strategy session. All right, so the first thing is we have the fire alarm material, right? And that's $34,577. I'm not counting for the batteries. The next thing after that you will have to account for is if the job is not approved by the fire department and you are doing the design build is what they call it, meaning that you're designing the fire. You have an engineer that's designing the fire alarm system, and he's going to submit the paperwork to the fire department, deal with the fire department until these drawings actually get approved by the fire department. So you have engineering and filing, and that could run you anywhere between $6,000 and $15,000 a project, depending on the size of the project. Based on the data and 24 volts, you're going to have to buy fire alarm wire. Now, New York City number 16 wire will run you around $600 at cost that you're going to have to pay. And New York City number 14 wire is going to run you around $750, and this is per 1,000 feet that you have to buy. So if you need 10 rolls of number 16, that's $6,000. If you need 10 rolls of number 14, that's $7,500. That's already right there almost $14,000 in just wiring alone. Okay, so the next thing after that, you have your central station, because I always throw this in. So included with your central station, you have, they could either use the phone lines, it's still going to be the same price. If they provide the phone lines, or if you provide a communicator, rather it be the NAPCO communicator, the ones inside the red metal enclosure, those are the best ones to use for fire alarm. Don't use the plastic ones. I mean, you can use the plastic ones, but I like to always step it up and do something a little bit better, and I use the metal box enclosure because it just looks better when you run pipe to it. So you have a communicator, then you have the central station paperwork, you have the account activation, you have to build out all the zones and information inside the system, you have to install the communicator. If you're using IP, you have to buy Cat 6 cable. So the installation with running a wire and connected into the central station, you need to do the communicator programming. Rather, if you're using NAPCO, Honeywell, whatever, you still have to program the communicator with the central station information, because come with the account activation is where you get the account number from the central station, and you have to put that inside of the communicator. So you got the communicator programming, and then I throw in 100% test, which is usually like 8 hours depending on the size of the system. 100% test of signals to the central station, and you could just give them a roundabout price. I charge them $3,500. Next, you're going to need an expediter. That's anywhere between $350 and $500. Oh no, we're not done yet, because in New York City you're going to need electricians, and if you're not doing the install yourself or partnering with electrical contractors, because what we do is we have like-minded electrical contractors that's similar size, built and company just like me, similar in age, 1 or 2 guys they have. It's a similar size company, similar size personality, and you attract these individuals when you're actually doing this type of work. I have a crew of electricians that's just like me, and what we do is we go on this bid together. So now you're going to need the electrician's labor, whatever the electrician is charging, because the electrician is responsible for pulling. He's going to have to submit his ID and insurance to the fire department, because we're going to need a project authorization once we get the approved drawings. Once we get the project authorization, is really legally is when we can actually start the work. Once we do that, once we complete the fire alarm install, the fire alarm company and also the electrician have to fill out a form 8433, and the electrician electrician has to stamp that. These are additional things that they will have to do once the project is going and once it's completed that the electrician is responsible for. So the electrician will give you his labor to install the system and to handle that paperwork. So depending on the size of the job, let's say the electrician labor is $25,000. So now you could have a roundabout idea of why fire alarm systems are so expensive. So after the electrician labor, because we didn't even account for the fire alarm company, the fire alarm is just selling the material. He hired the electrician. He already bought the wire. He only bought the central station and applied the labor for that. So now it's going to come a time where the fire alarm company is going to have to send his guy there for smarts and parts and also project managing, making sure the electricians install the thing correctly and do all the programming and then do all the testing with the electrician, pre-testing and also final testing. So we got fire alarm labor. And let's say the fire alarm labor is $10,000. I want to go back to the electrician's labor. So also included in the electrician's labor is going to also be the conduit, the piping, and all of that information. However, once you start getting good and working with the same electricians, you pretty much have an idea what they're going to be charging, and it'll be better for you to charge the project out as a whole and then work as a GC as if you are a GC, then hire the electrician at their rate, and then just try to get them and then try to beat them down on their price. I'm gonna be real with you. And this is exactly how I do it. I write it out on a piece of paper just like this, and I add it up individually and figure out how much it is going to cost as a total. And the next step after this, I put these numbers inside of my price calculator cheat sheet that I'll also leave in the description that you could download. This is something I created so that way I could stop cheating myself and actually charge the right price. Because when I was doing my pricing earlier, I was never incorporating the business. I was only just charging for one person and that one person alone, not really no markup or anything like that. But I do it totally differently now. I actually charge as an actual business so we can actually make money. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So here's a simple spreadsheet that I created. You can use this to calculate your price for service, your price for installs. If you're selling products, you could use this as well. So what we have here, you could put your project information in. You could put the technician's labor rate, the amount of hours for the technician. It will automatically calculate what that information is. Here you will put how much it's going to cost for all of your material, your vendors. You lump that up into one spot and put that there. It'll give you your markup cost. I have it at 10%, but you could change this to 15%. You could change this to whatever you want. And one thing for you to understand, you see you have this box that's highlighted. If you hover over it until the plus sign shows up, you can copy the rest of the cells down so that way they all have the same calculations. Here will give you the total cost of your material cost with the markup, and this column right here will give you the total cost of everything over here. This will give you the added expense, so it's going to give you your total added expense, your company expense. And how I calculated my company expenses, after you're in business for 1 year and you're using some type of accounting software, we use QuickBooks for construction. And what we do is we use our profit and loss statements and we turn it into decimals. So my expenses for the business is around 30%. So I add my expense cost of 30% to everything I bill on top of the price. If my price is $100, it's going to be $100 times 30%. So 30% is always going to be my expense cost that I add on top of my prices. And your expense cost will be different depending on how you spend your money within your business. And here it will give you your total project cost, how much the company makes profit, and how much you should charge the client. Now here is where it gets good because I broke it down for you to let you know how you should allocate your money. So once the company profit comes in, it's going to break it down into 3 different categories. You have your money you should be putting in your tax account, money you should be putting in your retained earnings account, and money you should be putting in your owner's drawer. Your owner's drawer is the money you can take from the business, or you can put it back into your retained earnings. Your retained earnings is how you grow your business, and obviously your tax account is how you pay your tax. So let's input all of this information into here and see how much we're going to charge this client for this fire alarm job. And here you will put your labor rate. You will put your actual labor rate, because even if you're paying your guys $20 an hour, $40 an hour, that's not your actual labor rate, because you have to pay for payroll taxes, insurances, what they have on the truck, and all these other different fees. So whatever your labor rate is, if it's $125 per hour and you're sending 2 guys, you want to put $250 an hour and then account for the business. So you will put $375 an hour. So let's say we're charging $125 an hour. We're only going to send 1 guy because he's going to manage the whole entire program. So our labor rate will be $250 because we're going to account for the man that we're sending, and we're also going to account for the business. So let's say all we need is 40 hours to actually do this work, because they're not going to need us too many times to show up to actually do this work, because we gave them an overall price of $10,000. But I really would not be charging 40 hours. I would probably be charging about 30 days because they call a lot of times. But for easy configuration, once you start actually doing installs, you'll know how long it actually start taking to actually do an install. Sometimes I'm off, sometimes I'm on, sometimes I really make money. It's a game, so you have to figure it all out. So our total material cost is $70,777. We're going to plug that number in, and the calculator is going to do the rest. So our markup for the material at 10% is going to give us a $7,000 markup. So our total material cost will be $77,854.70. The total labor cost, combined with the labor, material, the fire alarm labor, and the total cost of the material with the electrician, the engineer, the expediter, and all the fire alarm equipment and stuff like that, that total labor cost would be $87,854.70. The added expense on top of that comes out to be $8,785.47. So now the total project cost, this is what it's going to cost you to run this project approximately. This is your total project cost. Your company profit will be around $9,000, $9,664. So the total price you want to charge your client will be $106,304.19 to provide a turnkey fire alarm installation. Now the profit breaks down. Company should make, if it stays on budget, the company will make around $31,890. The company will make $31,891.26, and you could put evenly that money into each one of these accounts, and the owner's draw, like I said, can go back into your retained earnings, or you can just put this in your pocket to go do some stupid shit. I really wouldn't suggest that though, but essentially this is how you are able to do stupid shit, by making passive income, not your forward income, really. So this is a calculator that you can use to build out your material costs, your labor costs, or even if you're selling products, or even if you're doing regular random service calls, you can use this as well. So let's say you're doing a random service call and you are paying yourself $40 an hour. That $40 an hour is roughly $70. Let's say $70 an hour. Let's say $75 an hour, roughly, to stay safe. And it's going to take you 4 hours to do that job. And the material that you have to buy is $250. So the price you would charge your client will be $760.44 for that 4 hours of service work. You may have to change out one smoke detector, two smoke detectors, whatever you have to do. This is how essentially you would charge the client to make money within your business. And then you can also break down your profits. But also remember, you only charge for one person. So you have to account for the business. So you have to include another $75. So now your price would actually be $1,157.19. Don't be afraid to charge this money, because you can definitely get this money for fire alarm systems. I installed 4 horn strobes for $12,000. So you can definitely charge this price. So don't be afraid to charge what it actually costs for you to do the work, so your company can make money and grow. Now, once I get my total price, I input this information into my proposal, and there's a link in the description so you can get all of these templates for yourself. So the cover page usually will have a nice little picture of a fire alarm system. If I'm doing fire alarm cameras, whatever the system I'm working on will have that nice little image there. I will address the project and the address where it's from, my email address, make sure the date is the date, and a contact phone number for the business. Then my second cover sheet is now going to have more detailed information about our information, where you can find us, my logo, our address, what the proposal is for, who is it for. Then the next page after that is where we're going to start outlining this information. We're going to let them know we looked at these particular drawings. You want to be clear. You want to let them know that you actually understand what you're doing. So these are the drawings I pulled all of this information off. And when you build out your system in Estacom and print it out and you have it next to you, all you have to do is just type everything out what you have and just list all of the things you need to list. You have your fire alarm wire. You have, of course, you have to put a documentation box. You have your electrical crew. You have your fire alarm programmer. You're going to be running some conduit. You're going to have the electrician design the drawings. He's going to sign and seal the drawings by a professional electrician. I always provide the filing fees to give them an incentive that I'll pay for the job for you. Usually the filing fees is the client's responsibility, but to keep the process moving, I just paid for it. But it's actually in the price. I'm letting them know it's going to be requested for one inspection. You have to obtain, and we're going to get the letter of approval. And once we finish the system, we're going to design you an as-built riser diagram. There's some special notes that I put in here. The A433 will be prepared by Syscorp and the electrical contractor, because the EC needs to use its stamp, original stamp on the paperwork. Here's our pricing terms. Pricing is firm for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is. Here's the payment terms, 30% down payment, another 30% when we finish the drawings, another 30% when we release the equipment, and the final 10% is once we get the final approval from the fire department. There's more clauses inside our proposals just to protect us as the company as much as we can. And then lastly will be the final price of whatever we priced out this particular job. And I always write it out in numbers, and I always write it out in letters. So if my price is $257,270.51, that's exactly what I'm going to write it out, as if I'm writing a check. And then I'll sign it. Then I'll have some space for them to where they could put their information when they actually approve this proposal. So that is the entire process I use when I get a set of drawings, or even if I actually get an entire project. Now, once the project is built, you and your engineer is going to have to prepare some shop drawings. And how you do that is you go back to the software that your manufacturer had gave you, and you pull out the reports. You pull out the battery calculations, you pull out the panel information, and this is what you would send to your engineer so they could take this and put it on the drawing, and it would actually look like this. Here would be the battery calculations it would be the panel information. It will have the battery calculations here as well. You could put your derating factor is always 1.2, 24-hour standby time, 5 minutes, 15 minutes if it's a voice system. Depending on what the qualifications are for that particular design, you would make that adjustment here so it could give the engineer the right calculations. And if you're using a booster panel, it's going to have that information there, and it's going to give you the size batteries that you need. And lastly, it's going to give you the panel information, all the devices that's connected to the panel, what the current draw is, what devices are drawing the most current, just give you a whole level of detail, because you're always supposed to have spare space on your system, whether it be the data loop or NAC circuit. So this is giving us a quick indication if we have room to grow the system. If not, off jump, we can say, no, we need a bigger, price us out at a bigger system so we can have future growth for expansion. And when you give that information to the engineer, this is what it's going to look like when he put it on a set of drawings. He's going to have all of that information copied and pasted onto the drawings, so that way when we hand these over to the electrician, they know how to put the system in, how many devices for each circuit with minimal supervision. And also the client's engineer will also understand the type of system we're putting in and how much space they have also for future growth. If you want to learn more about fire alarm, visit my website, join me at the training center. We'll give you 7 days access for free. If you have any questions about fire alarm, hit the link, the support link, where you can submit your questions. And also inside the training center, I'll go live to give you step-by-step tutorials on how you could do programming, do Edwards panels, Kitty panel, and also the Firelight panel. And if you have any questions or any videos you want me to do, let me know in the comments, and I got you. I'll catch you in the next one.